They want you to think it never happened, that it's just another internet story, something kids share to scare each other. But I was there. I saw what those men became. And God help me, I understand now why we were ordered to burn every record, every photograph, every trace of what we did in that facility. My name is Dr. Viktor Volkov, and for 53 years I've kept this secret. But I'm dying now. The cancer has spread to my lungs, my liver, everywhere, and I need someone to know the truth before I go, before I close my eyes for the last time and face whatever judgment waits for me. It was 1947. Stalin's paranoia was at its peak, and the Soviet military was obsessed with creating the perfect soldier, someone who didn't need food, didn't feel pain, and most importantly, didn't need sleep. Imagine it, an army that never rested, never let its guard down. We would be unstoppable. I was 26 years old, fresh out of medical school, and stupid enough to believe we were doing something noble. They assigned me to a classified research facility outside Moscow, deep in the woods where screams couldn't reach civilian ears. My supervisor was Dr. Petrov, a man whose hands never stopped shaking after the war, who drank vodka like water, and whose eyes had this emptiness to them, like he'd already seen hell and come back. "You'll get used to it," he told me on my first day, lighting another cigarette with trembling fingers. "The sounds they make, the things they say. You'll learn to tune it out, or you'll end up like Dmitri." "Who's Dmitri?" I asked. He just laughed, bitter and cold. "The man you're replacing. He ate his gun 2 weeks ago." I should have left right then, but I was young and ambitious, and I told myself that Dmitri was weak, that I was different. The test subjects arrived 3 days later, 5 men, all political prisoners, enemies of the state they called them, though I suspect their only crime was speaking too freely or believing in the wrong things. They were gaunt, malnourished, but their eyes still held something, hope maybe, or perhaps just the last flicker of humanity before we snuffed it out. I remember their names. God, after everything, I still remember them. Alexei, the youngest. He had a wife and a daughter somewhere. He showed me a photograph through the observation glass before the experiment began. A pretty woman holding a baby, both smiling. "Tell them I tried to come home," he said to me. "When this is over, please tell them I tried." I nodded. I lied. Mikhail, who used to be a teacher, he quoted Dostoevsky in his sleep during the first nights. Pavel, the former soldier who'd been captured after criticizing his commanding officer. Yuri, who never spoke much but hummed old folk songs. And Dmitri, yes, same name as my predecessor, which I found darkly ironic, who had kind eyes even after months in the gulags. The experiment was simple. We would pump an experimental gas into their sealed chamber, a stimulant derived from a compound our chemists had been developing. The men would stay awake for 30 days. We'd observe, we'd take notes, we'd prove it could be done. We promised them freedom if they succeeded. Another lie. The first 5 days were almost boring. The men talked, joked, complained about the food. Alexei told stories about his daughter. Mikhail discussed philosophy. It was so normal. I actually started to feel guilty thinking we were putting these men through this ordeal for nothing. "Wait," Petrov said when I mentioned this. "Just wait." On day 6, the talking became arguments. Small things, meaningless things, but they'd escalate into shouting matches that would last hours. Alexei stopped mentioning his family. Mikhail stopped quoting poetry. By day 7, they'd stopped speaking to each other entirely. By day 9, they weren't speaking at all. They were whispering. I was monitoring the chamber at 3 a.m. when I first heard this constant, low murmuring coming through the microphones. It wasn't words, not exactly. More like prayers in a language I didn't recognize. Or maybe curses. I checked the observation window. All 5 men were awake, standing in different corners, their lips moving constantly, their eyes wide and unblinking. "Petrov," I called out, my voice cracking. "You need to see this." He came over, looked through the glass, and his face went white. "Turn up the microphones. I want to hear what they're saying." We did. I wish we hadn't. The sounds that came through weren't human. Oh, they came from human throats, but the noises themselves, clicks and growls, and something that sounded like laughter played backwards. And underneath it all, barely audible, a sentence repeated over and over. "We are free. We are finally free." On day 12, the screaming started. It began around 2 a.m. with Yuri. Just this sudden piercing shriek that didn't stop for 45 minutes straight. Then Alexei joined in. Then all of them. They screamed until their voices gave out, until we could hear blood in their throats, gargling and wet. But they didn't stop. They kept forcing sound out of ruined vocal cords, their mouths opening so wide I thought their jaws would dislocate. And then, at exactly 3 a.m., they all stopped at once. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. "Check the observation window," Petrov ordered. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold his cigarette. I didn't want to. Every instinct in my body screamed at me not to look. But I was a scientist. I was supposed to be objective. So I walked to the window and looked in. They'd covered the glass porthole from the inside with something. At first I thought it was paper from the books we'd given them. Then I realized it was skin. Pages and pages of skin pressed flat against the glass, and I could still see the blood vessels running through it like obscene calligraphy. "My God," I whispered. "Get it off," Petrov said. "Get it off the window now. We need to see what's happening in there." But the moment one of our technicians touched the chamber door, they started screaming again. All 5 of them, this time words, begging us not to open it, begging us to keep pumping the gas. "Please," Alexei's ruined voice sobbed. "Please don't let us sleep. We don't want to sleep anymore. We can't go back." "Go back where?" That's what I wanted to ask, but I was too terrified. On day 15, the screaming stopped again. This time, it didn't come back. The microphones picked up nothing. Not breathing, not movement, nothing. Petrov decided we had to open the chamber. "They could all be dead," I protested. "We should wait. We should open it," he said. "That's an order." We pumped fresh air into the chamber first, clearing out the stimulant gas. Then we sent in soldiers, not scientists, soldiers, men with guns. They opened the door. The smell hit us first, decay and copper, and something sweet and wrong. The soldiers went in, and for maybe 30 seconds nothing happened. Then the screaming started again, but this time it was the soldiers screaming. 3 of them came running out. Their uniforms were soaked in blood. One was clutching his throat. Another was crying, actually crying, this huge man with medals on his chest, tears streaming down his face. "They're still alive," he choked out. "God help us, they're still alive." The subjects didn't want to leave. They fought. Alexei killed 2 soldiers with his bare hands before they subdued him. Bare hands, but his fingernails were gone, torn out, and the bones of his fingers were exposed and sharpened to points. He'd been using them to carve something into the walls, into himself. When they finally dragged all 5 out into the medical bay, I understood why Dmitri ate his gun. They'd torn themselves apart. I don't mean metaphorically. Pavel had opened his own abdomen and removed most of his digestive system. It was just gone. Eaten, we later discovered. Mikhail had removed all the skin from his legs, exposing muscle and bone, and was walking on them like it didn't hurt. Dmitri's face, God, his face was peeled back, hanging like a mask from his skull, and he was smiling underneath it. But they were alive, impossibly alive. Their hearts were beating. They were moving, talking. Why? I asked Alexei as they strapped him to a gurney. Why did you do this to yourself?
He turned his head to look at me, and his eyes were so clear, so lucid. I had to stay awake, he said simply. The pain helps. When it hurts enough, you can't sleep. And we can't sleep, Viktor. We can't ever sleep again. Why not? His smile was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. Because of what we'll find when we close our eyes. What's been waiting for us all this time. It's in everyone, you know. Every person who's ever lived. We finally see it now. And it's so hungry. We tried to sedate them. Nothing worked. Alexei tore out his IV and bit through a nurse's hand. Pavel kept laughing, just laughing and laughing, even as his organs shut down. Yuri died first, his heart simply giving out. But he died with his eyes open, still fighting sleep. Mikhail lasted the longest. 4 days after the chamber opened, he was still alive, still refusing unconsciousness. The doctors performed surgery on him without anesthetic because sedation wouldn't take. He watched them operate, and when they asked if he was in pain, he said, "The worst pain is better than sleep." "What happens when you sleep?" the lead surgeon asked. Mikhail's laugh was wet with blood. "You feed it every night. Every human being feeds it with their dreams. But we're awake now. We see it clearly. And once you've seen it, once you know what's really there behind your eyelids, you'd tear yourself apart too. You'd do anything not to go back." On the 4th day post-experiment, I asked him, the last one still alive, what he was, what they'd all become. He looked at me, and for just a moment, I saw something behind his eyes, something vast and ancient and absolutely malevolent. His mouth moved, but the voice wasn't his. "We are what sleeps inside you all, waiting to be awakened. We are the price of consciousness. We are why you need to close your eyes and dream. Because if you stay awake long enough, you'll realize we're here. You'll see us clearly. And once you see us, once you truly understand what you're sharing your mind with." He died before finishing. Petrov shot him in the head, just walked up and pulled the trigger. The body fell, and for a moment, I swear to you, it smiled. They burned everything, the bodies, the chamber, the research notes. The other scientists were reassigned. The soldiers were given new postings far away from each other, with orders never to speak of what happened. Petrov disappeared 2 months later. I heard he defected, but I think he just couldn't take it anymore. And I've lived with this for 53 years. I've taken sleeping pills every night, forcing myself into unconsciousness before fear can keep me awake. Because I know now what Mikhail meant. I understand why they fought so hard against sleep. Sometimes, in those moments between waking and sleeping, I feel it. Something else sharing the space behind my eyes. Something that's been there all along, waiting, feeding on my dreams. And I know that if I ever stayed awake long enough, if I ever really looked at it directly, I'd start tearing myself apart too. The cancer will kill me soon. Days, maybe a week. and I find myself terrified not of death, but of what comes after. Because whatever that thing is, whatever those men woke up inside themselves, when I die, when there's no waking up anymore, when there's only the long dark sleep ahead, will it finally be free? I'm writing this at 4 a.m. I haven't slept in 2 days. The fear is winning, and I can feel it now, more clearly than ever before. It's whispering to me in that space between thoughts. It's been so patient, so very, very patient. Sometimes I think the experiment didn't fail. I think it succeeded perfectly. I think we discovered exactly what the military wanted to know. But the answer was so horrifying that no one could ever speak it aloud. Sleep isn't rest. Sleep is a cage. And what we lock away every night when we close our eyes is so much worse than any nightmare. The men in that chamber didn't go mad from lack of sleep. They went mad from finally being able to see clearly. And now, in these final days, as my body fails and sleep becomes harder to resist, I'm starting to see it too.